Thanks to everyone who's dialed in on time. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands from which I join you, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also extend my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where you are all based as well. I'm Christina Chiam, Creative Partnerships State Manager for New South Wales and ACT, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Creative Partnerships' third instalment of the Knowledge Series webinars. Over the next 8 weeks, the series will present insights and tools to build your arts fundraising expertise. In 2 weeks, we'll hear from Amy Barrett-Leonard, the former director of the Perth Institute of Contemporary Arts, who will share her experience and tips for growing a successful philanthropic program at a company with limited resources, as I'm sure everyone on here can identify with. This will be followed by another, what I like to think of as a Tammy Zonka zinger. This time, Tammy examines how we can create a case for support that will turn your doubters into donors. And she'll be joined by another US-based fundraising guru, Tom Ahern. And then the series concludes with a bit of data fun, I promise you it will be, where we'll examine the value of fundraising using what's called culture segments. And that's a powerful psychographic profiling system, and that'll be conducted by a UK-based consultancy, Morris Hargraves McIntyre. As always, bookings for any of those sessions can be made on the Creative Partnerships website. But today, it's a workshop-style webinar, so I encourage you to remain on mute during the main presentations, but to please come off mute and have your cameras on for the breakout sessions. That's a great chance for you to brainstorm and meet with some of your fellow attendees. As well as small group discussion, our wonderful team will be using a virtual polling program, so please have your mobile phones ready. I'm sure you're familiar with how that works, but the ladies will explain. And then there'll be time for questions at the end. So simply type your questions in the chat box as we go, and then we'll get to them as we can. For any technical issues, good luck. Please direct message my colleagues at the Creative Partnerships Zoom box. We're still novices apparently. And a reminder that we are recording today's presentation components, but not the breakout sessions. They'll be offline. So down to business. We're thrilled to be joined once again by the fabulous team at Stellar Partnerships, Linda Garnett and Sharon Dann. Stellar Partnerships, for those of you who don't know, they're a specialist consultancy building sustainable and profitable partnerships between corporates and non-profits. Their experience encompasses senior leadership, strategic management, major gifts, and trust and foundations, both in Australia and abroad. We first met Linda and Sharon with the inaugural Knowledge Series, where they shared current partnership trends and set the scene for a successful partnerships program model. We're building upon that foundation today by delving deeper into a key aspect of successful partnerships, that of understanding business needs for a solutions-based approach. So I encourage anyone who didn't participate in the first webinar to watch that recording another time, as these two sessions will complement each other. With over 30 years experience between them, I know very good hands. So please join me in welcoming Sharon and Linda. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Christina. And it's a delight to be with you here on this slightly rainy Melbourne day in Bunurong country of the Kulin Nation down here in Melbourne. And again, thank you so much for joining us. If you are able to put your video on, that's great, because we love seeing your faces, and we'll be asking you to put hands up or be able to engage. And please have your mobile phones to hand, because we will actually use them as well. I'll put them on mute for a little while, but we'll give you a cue and you'll be able to use them a little bit later. Now, during this session, as Christina said, we talked about at the last session about emerging trends, and so much has changed in that short space of time. Can I have a show of hands? How has your life changed over the last 3 years? Has something significant happened to you, either personally or professionally? Has life been a lot of change over the last couple of years? Yeah, I think for everyone it has, and it's certainly the case for corporate partnerships, which is why this is a great opportunity for us to talk to you about what's emerging now and moving away from a kind of old style sponsorship model towards solutions that are going to make you really, really successful. So over this session, we will have, as Christina said, some opportunity to have breakout groups and discussions amongst you all, so you can share your learnings, share your challenges as well, and hopefully come to some great ideas and some great insights together. First, I wanted to launch into giving you a bit of a perspective about what's in the head of corporates at the moment, so you know what's happening on the other side. Now, you would have probably heard a whole bunch of terms about what is going on in social responsibility, and it becomes a bit of an alphabet or acronym soup at the moment. You'd have heard about CSR, shared values, shared purpose, ESG, but what are they and how do they fit together, and why are they relevant to you? So I just wanted to spend a minute and just giving you a bit of a context of the background of what's happening in corporate land, so you can prepare yourself and be a bit more literate about what's the latest situation. Corporate philanthropy is something that you'll all be very familiar with. It's very much around corporate making profits, making donations. You might possibly have applied for grants or sponsorship gifts as well. And that's still a part of the mix. It's still a really useful part of the mix. That's kind of where corporate social responsibility started. CSR is really kind of have evolved into more of a sense of moral obligation of a corporate that's making substantial profits and feels like it should be giving something back to the community. Then somewhere around about a couple of decades ago, Michael Porter and his research crew came up with the term of shared value. Now, shared value really refers to a win-win. So a corporate offers their support, whether it's financial or otherwise. You exchange value. You provide things that are valuable to them. So everyone does win, but it's very much almost a transaction, an exchange of value, possibly less about relationship. And now in the last decade, there's been a trend towards social purpose. So you'll see on websites, corporates have, their vision, their mission, their sense of, who am I, what business am I in? But social purpose is now coming to the fore around building a narrative about, well, what is the good I do in society? Not just what I do, like I do financial products, I do insurance or banking, for example, but really about what is that impact I want to have. So social purpose is certainly coming to the fore around building a narrative and an opportunity for all of you to be part of informing that. Now, something that you may have tripped over, or you may be starting to field a few questions from your corporate partners, is around ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. This is something that has evolved out of the investor community, the big international fund managers that make investments in corporates across the world. Now, typically, if you're an investment manager, you try and balance your risk. You'll have some in one category balanced with others that might be performing not so well in another category. But the problem is when you get so big and you've got such a breadth of investments, you can't balance them out. The risk is not so much that one company or another fails, but actually the whole system fails, the planet fails. So ESG started with the investor community thinking about, how do I manage my risk, and how do I ensure that the whole system doesn't fall down? And it's now starting to be built into metrics for the largest listed companies. And it's also starting to filter down a bit to the next level, because if the big ones have got a really strong story about what they're doing for the planet, then the next level down actually need to compete as well. So I think the best way of thinking of, more traditional CSR versus ESG is that CSR is really about what an organization does with its profits. And ESG is more about the core of how did it make those profits in the first place? And did it do so in a way that didn't degrade the natural environment, exploit the community, exploit its staff, or maybe result of poor governance or ethical practices? So you'll find all of this sort of alphabet soup out there when you speak to corporates. And everyone is on a different part of the spectrum. And that's good. That's not a bad thing. But it's really important for you to understand where they are on this kind of spectrum because there's no sense in trying to sell them Ferrari when they're really at the scooter stage or they've barely got their driving license. So some are still at the spectrum on the left, which is they're very much driven by creating profit. They may be doing some corporate philanthropy or sort of low-level sponsorship, but they're actually fielding some awkward questions from their customers, from their staff, from the community in which they operate. And they're starting to think about, okay, well, how do I respond to that? And they respond with what we call buying good. So they buy goodwill with charity partnerships, sponsorship, staff volunteering. Often you'll find they're fairly ad hoc. They don't get a lot of ROI out of it, but it's a response to those awkward questions. And that's where, for all of you guys, you can be hoovering up some really philanthropic partnerships, some ad hoc donations, and that's all great. That's all great, especially for the smaller corporates that are not quite there, not ready to save the world yet. Then a corporate comes under pressure from its customers to say, okay, well, we've seen you do a little bit of this, but we want you to do more. And the business wants to expand as well. So corporates then try and go, okay, well, let's try and be good. Let's not just buy good, let's be good. So internally, what are the changes we need to make? That might be around things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or it might be around hiring practices, or making some more thoughtful decisions about its environmental impact or its supply chain. So they're starting on that, and they need help. No one can do it by themselves. They need your expertise, they need your input. And then there is a competitive pressure of, what is everyone else in our sector doing? Are they doing better than us? Are they stretching the envelope a little bit more? Do they have a social purpose narrative? Do they have a story to tell? And ultimately, the best ones and the more ambitious ones respond to that community pressure by starting to create some more high value and really entrenched partnerships, which is the sort of thing that you'd love to have, which would be, they become multi-year relationships, and they're hard to shake. And the transformational impact, both for your community and the business, is so much greater. But it's really important to think about, when you're having conversations with corporates, you need to figure out where on this spectrum they're at and tailor your solutions to them. As I say, it's not going to be a one size fits all, but you need to ask the right questions to be able to figure out where they are at. And because ESG is such an important thing right now and such top of mind for a company, there's a big imperative for corporates to get it right, because it saves them money, it attracts investors, it keeps the regulators off their back. It creates a much stronger value proposition for employees, and it does actually deliver on those big UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are trying to set forth, an agenda for a better planet and a better society for all of us. So it does matter. What you've got to figure out is where they're at on that spectrum and how you can be part of the solution, because they really do need your help. Now, to get you in the line of thinking about solutions, not just sponsorships or packages.
Talk then about what some of the problems are for a corporate. Because if you're going to start thinking about how you're a solution to some of the problems, you really need to understand what those problems are. So I think Linda asked the question before. We all agree that our world has changed dramatically over the last few years. It's changed dramatically for corporates as well. And with some of these things, they really don't know the answers. They're still working through it. You may or may not have heard of something called a VUCA world. So it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's ambiguous, and it's complex. So just like we don't know all the answers, corporates don't know all the answers as well. But here, I guarantee, are some of the issues that your corporates are facing. Economic uncertainty. Who knows? Are we going to go into a recession? Are we not? All of the ups and downs of COVID that we went through. Supply chain issues. Has anybody tried to buy a new car at the moment? And I understand you all remember how much an iceberg lettuce was a few months ago. There are supply chain issues massively for corporates at the moment. Carbon offsets, whether companies go carbon neutral, whether they go carbon zero. They are absolutely trying to figure that out at the moment before it is mandated. As Linda's already spoken about, do they go along the ESG, CSR, social purpose? All my competitors are doing something, I need to do something too. The Modern Slavery Act as well, which is coming, they need to make sure that they've got a policy on that. In terms of their marketing, brand loyalty and acquisition costs, cookies are about to go. So how are they going to do some of their digital online advertising? The cycle of distrust is Edelman produce a report each year, and it's about the kind of state of the world. It's a really comprehensive report. If you haven't read it yet, I really encourage you to. This year they've called it the cycle of distrust, because people don't believe in what governments are saying, what the media is saying. So that's what this year is actually termed, unfortunately, the cycle of distrust. So do people believe what a corporate is saying as well? The war of attention. I don't even know how many pieces of advertising we see right now, but how many emails have you had today? You know, how does a company get a message through to you? Cancel culture. Some really interesting examples come out of this with the war in Ukraine. There was, lots of companies pulled out of Russia immediately, but that wasn't the case for all of them. McDonald's was one that was really slow to react. So on social media, people were immediately going, let's boycott Macca's because they haven't pulled out of Russia. So it's very, very real for them, that cancel culture. And then finally, consumer expectations. We all want to make sure that, we're buying products that come from ethically sourced places that aren't destroying the planet, and the companies aren't, treating their employees really badly. Consumers expect businesses to be doing the right thing. Otherwise, they will be found out. It only takes for one whistleblower to go onto social media, and that can really damage the reputation of a business. So then we've got the employees side of things. You've heard of the Great Resignation that was happening at the end of COVID, and probably still going. I don't know if your LinkedIn feed is like this, but my LinkedIn feed is full of, I've got a new job, I've got a new job. It's really, really hard to keep hold of, for a company to keep hold of their talent right now. They need to have a really strong employee engagement and strong employee value proposition, because otherwise they're not going to attract that talent. If they don't attract that talent, they aren't able to innovate. They're not able to keep up with their competitors. So it's a real problem for businesses. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. If they are on ESG, or even if they're not, there's an expectation that there are females on boards, that they're supporting the LGBTQI community. So there's a lot of pressures. It's really, really hard to do business right now. And I encourage you, when you are thinking about your partnerships, if you're going to sell a solution, then you need to really get your head around some of the issues that businesses are facing, because then you may be a solution to these things.
Thanks, Sharon. And what we wanted to share with you for a bit of inspiration is how a couple of arts and cultural organisations have chosen to sell solutions. And it may be badged as sponsorship, but actually they're the solution to someone's problem. And now full recognition to the lovely guys from Sydney Film Festival for their work a while ago here with Mountain Goat Ale. Now, Mountain Goat was something that started in Victoria, and they had a particular challenge of how do we find a new audience? How do we establish ourselves in a new location, i.e. Sydney? It was a very valuable market. And the Sydney Film Festival guys were really smart and did their research, because they were looking for a beer sponsor, not any old beer sponsor. They wanted something that actually fitted, that had aligned with their values, and they alighted on Mountain Goat. And so the relationship with Mountain Goat really solved that particular problem for Mountain Goat. They needed venues, they needed new audiences, they needed a physical place where they can actually demonstrate and sample and reach new customers. So by aligning with Sydney Film Festival and having pop-ups at venues, presence at a whole bunch of screenings and so forth, it was a perfect fit for solving that problem of how do I go to a new market when they don't know us, we don't know them, what's a way in? So full kudos to the film festival guys for doing that. It was a lovely partnership, and you can see how, you know, the particular operational challenges for Mountain Goat, that film festival was the solution to them at that time. So it really was, you know, a great partnership. Another one that I think you'd be inspired by is the Smartphone Flick Fest, which is, I think, it's hard to say. That's why they call it SF3, I think. This is all about inspiring the next generation of filmmakers using smartphones, something that's easily accessible, and it's very, very popular, especially with young people. Now, Dolby is a name that you've probably heard if you're in sort of performing arts. They have a long engagement with arts and cultural events. You probably use them as a supplier in some ways or others. So Dolby had a particular challenge that it needed a more young audience. You know, it had a very established, mature audience, but didn't have a youth audience. It also had a gap in their response to Indigenous issues, again, around that diversity, inclusion, and equity. They didn't have a response. You know, they wanted it. They'd had a reconciliation action plan, didn't have much else. So the partnership with SF3 was perfect because SF3 had an inaugural First Nations Filmmaker Award. So Dolby came on board to support that, offer prizes, I think a smartphone, a tablet. They also offered mentorships and access to Indigenous filmmakers, to other Indigenous media identities, people like Stan Grant, Wayne Blair, etc. And the snapshot that you see here is one of the winning film. The lovely lady created a film around the sort of George Floyd incident called 8 minutes 46 seconds. But you can see how SF3 really played to how do we help you solve those problems in your business? How do we be part of that solution and get value for us? Because as a small enterprise, you know, on a shoestring budget, they really needed that sort of broad-based support for the festival. Again, they were selling solutions, which is fantastic. So we want you to think about, now this is time to get your smartphone out. We want you to think about which corporate problems can you help solve. So now the way to work this, if you haven't done it before, put your smartphone on here and take a little photograph of it, scan the QR code and click on the link, the Menti link that it will take you to. And it will take you to a series of questions. And what we want you to do is actually, there's a sliding scale of where are you at? Sharon, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think as long as you can scan on this with Menti, it's absolutely anonymous, so we don't know who, what the answers are that you put in. So don't worry, just answer as truthfully as you can on this, because we don't get to see who puts what answer in. And then I will share the results as they come through. Do you want to stop share, Linda, and I'll just share the results? And so you can see the results coming through. We've got some good, strong results here. So we've got 5 who've done it now. We've got 10, 11. So some of these may be stronger for you than others. And that comes, they'll come naturally to your organization. But I think, right, we've got 20 results on there now. But as you can see, that where the kind of average of these answers are as well, is that, can you help with the employee value proposition? Yes, you can. Can you help with brand awareness and loyalty? You may be a small organization, you think, well, they've got huge, absolutely huge budgets, but your content will be incredible. It'll be content that they don't have access to, which will help them with their awareness and loyalty. The same for acquisition and engagement. Can you help them with their CSR and the ESG? That's a strong answer from most of you. Diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm glad to see that that is strong on there because it's definitely one of your, the strengths. And then making a positive impact on the community. So you can see these are the things that corporates are looking for from arts organizations. And now what we want you to do is think about these things, because my answer for all of these things is you are the solution. You are absolutely, every single one of you are the solution to these questions that we've put there.
All right, Sharon, if you want to stop sharing the Menti screen, we'll come back to that a little bit later. And I'll go back to sharing mine. So what we want you to encourage you is to think about how you're leveraging all the things that you do really well and all the assets you have. So you're in industries that are creative, inspiring, thoughtful. You've got a lot to offer. All of these type of things that you potentially have to offer. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was speaking at the last session with a lovely organisation called Sensorium Theatre in WA that is quite unique in that it creates shows for young audiences with a disability. And they were exploring how they could actually get corporates and corporate audiences involved and get them to experience it in a different way as well. And in terms of people engagement, values, content, geography, one of the lovely organisations in Sydney that's based in just outside the West, Milk Crate Theatre, that is again run on a shoestring, have a really interesting partnership with their local Commonwealth Bank, because just before COVID, Commonwealth Bank built this really beautiful, pristine new offices and retail space, only for it to pretty much close down about a month later. And they've been really struggling for an incentive to get people back to work, actually physically back in the building. So for Milk Crate Theatre, all of the staff engagement and participation activities that they can offer the CommBank are a great way of incentivizing their people back into the office and actually working physically face-to-face in teams again. Again, a great solution to a particular problem. So we want you to think about how to leverage your strengths, what you do really well, what you do naturally even without thinking, and the assets that you have, and how you might think about creating solutions and what you might offer to a corporate that is going to be attractive to them in those areas of marketing and operations and people. And welcome back. Thanks very much. I hope you had some good conversations in your rooms. Really appreciated you spending the time and getting to know a few new friends, I think. I would love to hear from you about the solutions you came up with and the areas where you felt more confident in providing solutions, and maybe others where you think that's a struggle, that maybe that's not right for our organisation. I'd love to just spend a few minutes. Just please feel free to pop this in the chat box if you'd prefer, but I'd love if you wanted to unmute and actually share with us some of the discussions you are having in your breakout group about solutions. And don't be shy. I think some of you are having tech problems, so thank you for persevering. If you've got sound or if you've got tech problems, Lee, I know you're having one of those sort of days. Sharon, what about the conversations you were having in your room as well? Who else would like to unmute?
I think Anthony.
Anthony has just, yeah.
Anthony, tell us about that. Unmute and tell us.
Look, thank you very much. Look, I was just sharing where I work with Tranby Aboriginal Cooperative to re-establish Black Books and Aboriginal Publishing Arm and Literary Development Services to sort of share the stories, to amplify the voices, to tell the truths of Aboriginal people across, particularly with a strong focus as we emerge of New South Wales, but also nationally. And so, I just shared, we identify in our workplace that the growing level of interest that we see in acknowledgements of country and on websites and people having reconciliation plans, but also what's really important is about the relationships. It's about how it's not just something that it's not a box to tick. It's a commitment to change, and it's a change at a very personal level, but also a change at a structural level, and be that it's the corporate structure or the social structure, community structures that come with it. So we as an organisation, we're recognised as the oldest Aboriginal organisation continuous in the country, set up in 1957. This year celebrating 65 years. So just to note that that's 10 years before the referendum that actually acknowledged Aboriginal people in this country. So Tranby has a very strong education focus in the delivery of cultural programs during that time. And so part of our offering is, for people to meet Aboriginal people, to share stories, to hear stories. So, we feel we're in a good place. We also, like all of us, coming out of the COVID and all the changes that we need to identify and the opportunities that we need to embrace. So we're, sort of shifting forward and starting to identify what our offering, be it to philanthropy or be it to corporates. And also the point I also shared was around we're learning to say no to some corporates. We get approached by a lot who want to come out for an afternoon, bring 25 people to volunteer, for 4 hours, and the drain on our organisation, and our wonderful, wonderful CEO doesn't like saying no because it might lead to something. And I'm saying, but let's cost that out, on the chance that it might go somewhere to do it. So we're having a bit of a shift in our thinking and our practice around that as well.
Don't you just love that? I've got 80 people that are going to land on your desk sort of like 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have you got something? That's a common problem, Angie. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what an amazing amount of expertise and credibility and authority that you've built up over such a long time.
Yeah.
I can see so many opportunities for you to be the solution for a corporate, not only the ones who are trying to do the right thing, maybe they've actually gone to the trouble of a reconciliation action plan, but they're kind of a bit stuck about what to do next.
That's right.
And also, internally they want to do the right thing, but also externally they want to communicate in a way that is authentic and respectful. And they're absolutely terrified of getting it wrong. So I can see so many ways in which you are the solution, both to some of their own internal staff development and staff value proposition, but also outwardly with their marketing and their customers as well, to be able to lead with it. So whether that's a fee for service or a partnership, lots of really great opportunities, and hopefully a voice in the Constitution would be another sort of feather in your cap as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's a great example. Would anyone else like to share an example that they discussed within their breakout room?
We've had some people share their thoughts in the chat box there about their strengths, and then also about how they may be a solution to some of those corporate issues as well. So we've had Ali and Alan who both shared their strengths there.
And Ali, that's a terrific one, alignment with the youth audience, which is, I don't know if you want to unmute and say a little bit more, but that is such a hard one to reach. For most corporates, they really struggle with that because young people consume messages in so many different platforms, unlike an old crusty like me who still reads newspapers and watches free-to-air TV. Young people aren't doing any of that stuff. Do you want to comment on that, Ali, and unmute a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I guess we're pretty new, but our organisation is really focused on our region because there's not a lot going on as far as the cultural sector here. There's no resources or infrastructure or anything like that. So the way we sort of see it is that we can partner with people to really engage, and we're very opportunistic in the way we consume arts and cultural. So our events will be very, I guess, more tailored as experiences that engage audiences through, I guess, pairing disciplines and, partnering with youth organisations, and we're in a very diverse, I guess, region. So in order to do that, we're looking at, ways that I'm going blank. Just aligning with that, our audience is very focused on, working with, I guess there's a bunch of youth audiences in this region that have, like, I don't know if you've heard of the university, can't remember what it's called. Anyway, they basically do a bunch of partnering. Oh, sorry, I'm very nervous now.
No, that's all right. I don't want to put you on the spot. I think you have a really unique opportunity of connecting to a youth audience. So you've already got a youth audience. You've also got something that's really engaging for youth audience, as opposed to, you know, a lot of corporate stuff is really boring, really dull, and much as they try and zhuzh it up, actually, you know, you're the sizzle, you're the interest and the inspiration as well. So I think, especially if you're in a, you know, a particular area, rural or regional, or a, you know, particular location, you obviously have a deep connection to the community, and that's really valuable because you'll have credibility and you'll have trust with them. So thank you so much for being brave enough to share that. And I think, who else was it? Alan from Umbrella Studio as well. Social connection for employees, absolutely. We've all been so locked down over recent years. You know, we do actually crave seeing each other and having those connections. Do you want to add to that, Alan? Do you want to unmute and say something there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that social connection is really important. And someone from our group also mentioned that there might be organizations now or companies that totally work from home, and they don't have a chance to get together because they may not have an office at all. So that would be even more important for them. And then I also just noted that sometimes we have important people coming to our exhibition openings. We're a gallery here. And that the corporates might want access to them.
Access to your key people and you know, key supporters is a really important one, Alan. Thank you. That's a great idea. I noticed Marissa also said that you have a youth audience. You have content, presumably, Marissa, that you can actually.
We do, yeah. We're a youth circus based in Mullumbimby, Northern South Wales, and we do have some content building that profile now. We just had a big circus festival, but I just wanted to ask, you know, other than online, and there's some issues around that because our youth are a bit younger, like kind of under sort of 16 predominantly. So other than those online content opportunities, and other than the corporates coming in and doing a day in the circus, you know, catching each other, I just wanted to hear any other ideas people have around connecting with that youth audience in a more kind of sustainable, meaningful way.
So for ideas for corporates to actually come to be able to engage with that audience, often it's really good to engage with the audience where they're at. So it might be community activations, it might be in schools, it might be at specific events as well. So it can be face-to-face other than online. So it will be probably a bit of a mix, given the world we're in at the moment. So it can be online. It could be sort of live forums as well, like town hall type of Q&As as well. Happy to chat to you offline if you want to chat about some other ideas, but great that you've actually got that audience and starting to build out some ideas.
One of the things we noticed in our group, Linda, was the solutions that the participants brought. Some came from the external offering of the art, the experience, the platform, what you actually do as an organisation, and the other side was how you do it. So how you operate as a business and how that could benefit and mutually benefit another organisation who's on the same trajectory as you. So how do you build an inclusivity plan together, or your RAP plan together? How do you execute it together? The people that you employ, and so on. So the sort of external and internal offerings of your company, don't ignore how you operate as a business and what that value and benefit it could provide to partners as well.
That's a great insight, Christina, because what we hear from corporates and the corporates we work with all the time is that we need expertise. We need your expertise because you know stuff that we don't know. You can tell us how to do it in a way that is meaningful, that is respectful, that is engaging. So we actually need your expertise. So I'd encourage everyone not to, as Christina said, not just think about what you do, but how you do it and the expertise that sits behind how you do it. So for example, the one I mentioned earlier, Sensorium Theatre, about how they work with young audiences with a disability and the expertise that they've built around that how to be inclusive, how to.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. You know, you've all come up with some really good strengths that your organizations have, but obviously every business is different, just like we're all different as well, and so they're going to be on a different trajectory. And the easiest thing that you can do is actually work out whether your solution, whether they've got a problem that you are actually the solution to, and how you're going to find out that problem is by asking some really good questions. Now, I've got on the screen there a gap analysis, and I'll get you to think about a gap analysis in this way. So probably the easiest way is to think about your KPI. Okay, so your KPI for the year is kind of your, you know, that's your need, that's where you want to get to. And then where you're at right now is your current state. So what you need, your needs are, you know, what you've got to do to achieve that KPI. And a company's no different, that they're going to have certain ambitions that they want to achieve, and they're going to have certain issues that they need to overcome. And so when you're asking about your questions, what I need you to think about are two things. What are their pain points in the business? So what kind of things are going wrong? How are they trying to fix those problems at the moment, and where are they at in fixing those problems? You know, how else are they trying to fix those problems? And then the second one is their ambition. So pain points, ambition. So what are their ambitions? What are their strategic plans? And where are they at right now towards achieving that strategic plan? So are they on track? Are they behind? How are they trying to, you know, how else are they trying to achieve their ambitions? Because if you can really, when you're asking questions in that meeting, if you can think of those two things, pain points are great, because if it is a problem in a business, they've generally, and if it's an urgent problem, they've generally got a little bit more money to throw at it as well. But also, if, you know, the ambition is something that the CEO is really driving and everybody's focusing on it, they're also going to have money to throw at that. So pain points and ambitions, think of those two things. Now, I want you all to grab a piece of paper and a pen for me, because what I'm going to do is give you a structure on how to uncover those kind of pain points and those ambitions, and how you can go about asking some really good questions in your meetings, so you can find out, you know, what are their issues, and actually how can you help try and solve them. So this is what we call our discovery questions. So down the side of your paper, I just want you to write discovery, as you can see it on there. So, you know, D and then I, and I'm going to go through each of these points with you, so that next time you're in a meeting, I would love you to write down in the back of your notebook, discovery, so that you actually remember what each of these letters stands for, and you can make sure that you don't go, you know, when you leave the meeting then and you go, oh, I forgot to ask that question. Have they got any money? So let's go through each of these letters now. So D, right next to that, I want you to write decision maker. You need to know if you're speaking to the right person. Yeah, you need to qualify them. You need to be able to understand whether how much money they've got, or you know, whether it's going to go to a board. Now, you don't obviously want to ask someone straight out and just go, hey, can you make a decision on this? Are you powerful enough? You know, are you influential enough? So the way that I like to ask that question is I say, so what's the decision-making process within your organization? So you can find out whether they've got sign-off rights, or whether it needs to go, you know, up the chain, or whether it needs to go to a board. So that's the easiest way that I found of introducing that. What's the decision-making process within your organization? Or the other one is, especially if you've got a multifaceted partnership, is who else should we be involving in these conversations? So you may be speaking to a marketing manager, but lots of you have spoken about there that you've got, you know, disengaged employees, and you've got employee engagement. So you may want to get somebody in from their employee team, like the HR person as well. So who else should we be involving in these conversations? Important. You need to really ask and find out what is important to that business right now. So what are their main priorities? What are the business drivers? What is the business focusing on? So, and this is where I want you to think about those pain points and those ambitions. So, you know, how is the team going? How is the business going? What goals have you got for the year? How are you going towards achieving those plans? How was your, I saw this, you know, your latest campaign. How did that go? What's the feedback been? So you can find out really what's going well within that business and what's not going well. And I guess most importantly is what's important to that business right now? What are they focusing on? What's their priority right now? Your S is for squeaky wheel. You may have heard the expression, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And every organization will have a squeaky wheel. And if you think about the own organizations now, and this is the way that I ask that question, because a squeaky wheel will be something that isn't written on paper. You won't find it in a strategic plan, but far out, it's a bugbear. It's an absolute bugbear. So simply ask them, what's the squeaky wheel within your organization at the moment? What's getting the attention of your executive? And you'll be amazed what people will tell you about that squeaky wheel. It's a wonderful question. So you can find out what the biggest challenges are within that business and potentially then how you may be a solution to some of those big challenges. Capacity. Show of hands, who likes asking about money? Yeah, we can all get a little bit gun shy sometimes about asking for money, but you obviously don't want to get into 3-4 meetings with someone and find out, you know, that they don't have a budget and they just want to volunteer, and you know, you don't want to get in that situation. I found a really nice and gentle way to bring up budget is ask them, what financial year do you operate on? So that then you can start opening up the conversation about budgets and go, so is this something that you're looking at in this financial year, or is that in next financial year? The other thing around capacity is as well, you also want to find out kind of how much they're spending on other partnerships or other sponsorships that they're already doing, especially if you found one of those problems, one of those ambitions. So, you know, when we're asking about the other partners there, it's like, oh, well, how much are you, you know, what is your budget around partnerships? I noticed that you've got a partnership with X, Y, or Z, and what's the value of that? How much is that returning to your organization now? The other really good question to ask about capacity, if you do find one of those real issues, how much is that costing your business? And we were talking before about that company that had made a cartoon, but I guarantee you, making a cartoon is not very cheap. This was in our breakout room. So you can understand what kind of budget they've got to put behind something there. Other partners, you do want to find out if they've got other partners or other sponsorships. And this is where you can get them to dish the dirt as well. Ask them, you know, what are the other partnerships? What do you enjoy about those sponsorships? What are they doing really well? What are they not doing well? So that you can think about how, you know, you may be the solution over some of their existing partnerships and sponsorships. Values. Values is an interesting one because lots of companies will have values and they'll put them on the back of a business card and then they never do anything with them. So especially if they've got values like, you know, inclusivity or lots of these values, ask them, how are you demonstrating your company values? Because you may be the solution, you may be actually enable a way for them to authentically demonstrate how they can follow those values. External factors. You do want to know about kind of what's going on in their world, and what's going on externally in their world as well. You know, are there things that may influence a partnership? What are the competitors doing? What are the deadlines that you need to be working towards? So is there anything, so the question that I'd ask around this is there anything on the horizon that I should be aware of? Are there any important dates that we need to work towards? Risk management. So your R is for risk management. You do want to find out about their risk management as well as your own risk management. You know, some of you may have quite edgy materials. And so, you know, are they prepared to, especially one of the most valuable things they may be able to do for you is to share your content, you know, to increase your awareness, your ticket sales, your own donations. So finding out what their risk management is in terms of the work that you do, and is there anything that may prevent a partnership with you? And so again, the question that I'd be asking is, what would stop a partnership like we've been discussing from going ahead? Is there anything that I need to be aware of internally on discussions that you're having? And then that last question is the why, which stands for you, the person you're meeting with. Don't forget to find out about them, tread gently. You don't want to interrogate them and, seem like you're stepping over the line, but you do want to find out about the person that you're meeting with. What are their interests? What do they know about your organization? What's their interest in your organization? One of the really, really valuable things that you can ask here is, how do they like to be communicated with? I've had so many contacts who've had literally hundreds of thousands of emails in their inbox. And, you'll be pinging them proposals, you'll be pinging them going, hey, have you read that proposal yet? And they are never going to see it because they are just swamped in emails. But if you pick up the phone and call them, you'll get an answer straight away. So do ask them, what's the best way to communicate with them? Do you prefer a text, a phone call, an email? And just find out if you can some of their interests so that you can start building that relationship, because you're going to be having multiple meetings with these people. So discovery, I encourage you all, just write down that discovery and those kind of key, what each area is. If you can cover each one of those letters, you're not going to walk away from that meeting going, oh, I forgot to ask. And you'll get really, really good at asking some great questions, which will find out those pain points, those ambitions. So then you can really go back and think about, okay, so are we the solution to some of their issues? And what would that look like in a partnership or a sponsorship with us?
And what I'd also encourage you to do is, if you have existing partners and you've been with them for a while, do what we call a rediscovery meeting, which is almost run through this again, because sometimes things will have changed, things would have shifted. And often organizations forget to check in about the fundamentals. So you might be talking about the logistics of a particular activation or an event or something like that, and you get so down in the detail about this, you actually forget to check in on the fundamentals and whether they have shifted, whether they've changed. And this is a great format to be able to use that almost with fresh eyes with existing partners as well. So, the blank space there on the right is to be able to ask those questions in a style that works for you, and in something that you're comfortable with. So we do say play with it and adapt it and make it your own. Now, we've shared a lot of information with you, so apologies, we've probably gone at it too fast, but we would love to see from you maybe one thing that you'll do differently tomorrow. What is that commitment of, well, that's going to be, I'm going to go and think about that or explore that. So take off your phone and scan it. You'll be able to enter into it, free form, one thing that you'll do differently tomorrow. So I'll let you just scan that and get into it. You should probably have it on the next question. If everyone's comfortable with that, I'll stop share so that you can share the results, Sharon.
Fabulous. We'd love to see the commitments and the different things that you're going to do tomorrow. So we've got questions and rediscovery meetings.
Sharon, would you mind stop sharing just a minute so I can let Rachel scan it? I think she missed that.
If you see on that, Rachel, you can go to, I've got the code on the top. I can stop, but you can actually see the code on the top there. Hang on, I'll put it in the chat box. And then use this code.
got some great responses, Sharon, and I think there's going to be people asking a lot of really great questions with their partners and their prospects as well. Love to see that there's a bit of confidence coming in here around, how to inspire and the ideas that you've got, how to dig a bit deeper around the strengths that you really have and the expertise, as Christina suggested, not just what you have to offer, but how you offer it. And all of that, knowledge that you've built up over years of doing what you do. It sounds like there'll be some really interesting conversations held over coming months. Don't you think, Sharon? I think
so. I was just going to say about the questions as well, that, ideally, to begin with, this may feel a little bit uncomfortable and you may feel like you're putting people under a spotlight, and it's like, you will answer my questions. But we really want you to, once you start getting good at asking these questions, it will just feel like a natural conversation, and you can just dig a bit deeper in terms of the answers that you're listening to. One of those most powerful questions is why. On any answer that they give, while you want to check the back of your note and look at that discovery, it's just go, oh, that's really interesting. Why is that? Let me see where I'm up to in my list.
So we'd love to open the floor to questions, and I might hand over to Christina sort of to drive this. But if you do have further questions, if you want some help from us or just want some tips and to share where you're at the moment, please feel free to contact us. If you want some more regular communications from us on our blogs and some insights, then go to our website and sign up for the newsletter. We put something out every week that actually highlights new partnerships, fresh innovation, and give you some blog tips on something that's really topical. So do stay in touch. We are at the end of the phone if you've got some curly issues or you just want to talk to someone that just gets it. So Christina, I might actually hand over to you to run the last session and to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, Linda and Sharon. I always learn so much from your sessions. And I think this is a good test for everyone out there to think about a good question. Practice asking a question to Linda and Sharon right now. Got the opportunity, your inspiring words of asking questions. I'd love to see if anyone would like to write one in the chat box or just unmute. Is there anything you'd like to dig into further? Oh, all right, got to keep practicing your questions then. I have one. I'd love to know, using first of all, the discovery questions are so valuable. They'll be, I think, an incredible tool. And it was great to see everyone's reflections around what they'll do tomorrow about being more deliberate and conscious with how they approach companies and being curious and finding out what they need, not just what we need. When in those conversations, this is a bit practical, but do you have any advice for proposing multiple solutions? Is it about going with one whiz-bang idea, or what do you think about having a few options?
The way that we kind of, when we structure a partnership, I guess you want to make sure that you're hitting the main points, their main issues or their main ambitions first. But I think if you can go in with a lot of ideas and then funnel down to actually what works, what they agree to, what they think they're going to get the best value from your organization, but also where you think you can get the best value as well. And this discovery meeting is really only the first meeting, and that's really when you are asking so many questions. And I wouldn't be thinking about solutions in the meeting. I'd be thinking about solutions and going back and just testing and refining. Have I got the right understanding here? This is what you're looking to achieve. Well, this is what we've done with other organizations. How does that sound with you? And so it generally does tend to be a few meetings when you're, rather than just, here's my brochure, have a look at it, which one do you want? But there's a lot more value in, if you hit those pain points and you hit those ambitions, there's going to be a lot more money in it for you.
Thanks, Sharon.
I think the key is don't actually go into that first meeting looking to sell anything. But because your objective really is to gain as much information as possible, and then you're able to refine and start to think about proposing solutions, because otherwise you'll be kind of flinging stuff at the dartboard. And if you actually spend time listening, then you actually get a lot more information, and it'll make your proposal a lot more compelling, because they'll go, oh, you listened, or yeah, that sounds like it's really a great fit for us. And all you're really doing is kind of feeding back what they've already told you, but they won't remember that. So don't go in there with like ready-made stuff. Just have some stuff in the back of your head going, here's some options. Let's test the water. There's a great question here about sort of ESG versus CSR, and I guess I don't have a set percentage. Where ESG is activating really strongly is with the bigger companies, the listed companies, and the ones that operate across borders, the multinationals. It's starting with them, but it's kind of just filtering down to the medium-sized and the unlisted enterprises as well. I don't think CSR has gone away, but ESG is much more at the fore for the bigger listed companies, which business sectors are leading the way. I think because they have so many issues, things like fast-moving consumer goods, because they've got a lot of stakeholders, and probably mining and extractive are actually going strongly on ESG. Also, in a different way, the big consulting firms like your Deloitte's and your PwC's are going strongly because they're actually trying to offer you solutions. They're actually offering their services as solutions. So first of all, they need to get their ducks in a row internally to be able to say, oh, we can help you solve this because we've got it fixed. Whether they do or not is an entirely different question. But again, it tends to be the bigger ones, but the medium-sized ones are having to step up and start having less of a conversation around sort of risk management and their investor profile, but more around that sort of social narrative and having to up their game. So expect to see more of that. And one interesting thing for this audience as well is that we're finding that bigger corporates that are embedding KPIs around ESG in their business are increasingly asking their non-profit partners, what's your position? Are you doing anything internally around ESG? Have you got your processes? Have you got good governance? So they're starting to ask some really pointy questions about, have you thought about these issues? So it's something to put your mind to. You don't have to respond to investors and so forth in the same way. You probably need a stance on what are we doing for our staff, our environment, the community, etc. You may well have a much stronger answer than they do at the moment, but probably need to think about what is your story.
Thank you, Linda. It's incredibly true. I think we're seeing a lot in the media around some of those risks with arts partnerships and businesses where the alignment isn't quite right from either side. So it's really important that we all reflect upon how we do our business and the kind of companies that match that, and that we can speak as confidently about our way of business as they can. I'm conscious of time. Ali and Marissa, your questions are great. What I would suggest in terms of tips for getting that first meeting, talk to your state manager. All of you have a state manager from Creative Partnerships in your region. This is a great opportunity to have more in-depth one-on-one conversations with them about some of the specific challenges you're facing, opportunities you're exploring in the corporate partnership space. And for Marissa, same thing, we can talk about regional impact. I'm not quite sure if you mean how you value for them contra exchange. So I'd like to dig into that question with you a bit further. And then Matthew and Philippa, how do you explore and liaise with prospective partners before engaging our decision makers at our own company? Okay, again, let's talk. I think it depends on how you operate as a company and at what point your decision makers need to be involved. So that will be different to each company. But I think thank you everyone so much for joining. But Linda and Sharon, thank you. Every time you bring such inspiration and practical and logical application to this content. So thank you so much, and thank you all of you for participating warmly and enthusiastically. I know it's not always comfortable when we have to speak in front of people, but we've really enjoyed the session and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for joining us.